People used to tell me I was lucky. They said it casually, almost automatically. You have such a good husband. You're so close with your family. You really have it all. And for a long time, I believed them. My name is Emily, and if you looked at my life from the outside, it probably seemed solid and safe. Predictable in the best way. A marriage that had settled into comfort instead of chaos. A family that gathered for every holiday, every birthday, every excuse to sit around the same table and pretend nothing ever changed. Daniel and I had been married for 7 years. 7 years of routines, morning coffee, shared grocery lists, quiet jokes only we understood. The kind of marriage people described as healthy because there was no drama. No yelling, no slammed doors, no overt signs of conflict. He kissed my forehead every morning before work. He texted me when he was running late. He remembered my favorite dessert. And he loved my family. Or at least that's what I thought. Family gatherings were our constant. Like Thanksgiving, Christmas, random Sunday dinners that turned into long evenings filled with wine and old stories. And Linda was always there. My Aunt Linda wasn't just part of the family, she was the energy of it. She laughed loudly, touched people's arms when she talked, told embarrassing stories with zero shame. She had a way of making every room feel warmer just by walking into it. She never married and never had kids. People like to joke that she didn't need a family of her own, because she already had ours. Daniel adored her. Your aunt is hilarious, he told me the first time he met her. She's different, he said, smiling. I took it as a compliment. At dinners, Linda always sat close to us. If there was an extra chair, it somehow ended up next to Daniel. She teased him and asked about his work. Remembered details most people forgot. You're good for Emily, she once said, raising her glass toward him. Take care of her. I remember feeling grateful. Grateful that my husband fit so easily into my family. Grateful that my aunt approved of him. Grateful that everything felt aligned. Looking back, I try to pinpoint the exact moment something shifted. But the truth is, it didn't happen all at once. It happened quietly. In glances that lasted a second too long. In jokes I didn't quite understand. In the way Linda would say Daniel's name, casually, familiarly, like it belonged in her mouth. At the time, I told myself I was imagining things. After all, this was my aunt. And this was my husband. Two people who would never hurt me. That's the thing about betrayal. It doesn't announce itself. It waits until you trust it completely. The night that changed everything started like any other. A family dinner, a full table, and the comforting illusion that nothing was wrong. I told myself I was imagining things, that it was all in my head. But sometimes, imagination feels too real. The next Sunday, we had another family dinner. The kind where the scent of roasted turkey mixes with the faint aroma of candles, and the clatter of silverware echoes through a house filled with laughter. I noticed it first when Daniel leaned in closer to Linda while she told a story about her work. Not a casual lean, not a friendly shoulder brush. A tilt of his head that said, I'm listening to you more than anyone else in this room. I froze for a moment, gripping my napkin a little too tightly. Focus on the conversation. Don't overthink it. But I couldn't. I watched as Linda laughed at something he said, the kind of laugh that made the room feel warmer. Then I saw it, the briefest of glances. His eyes lingered on hers, just a second longer than a polite glance. I blinked. Maybe it was nothing. I told myself it was nothing. Later, as we cleared the table, I noticed them again. Standing near the kitchen counter, laughing softly about some inside joke I didn't hear. Daniel's hand brushed hers. Almost accidental, but not quite. Emily, can you pass me the serving dish? I did, my hands shaking slightly. He smiled at me like nothing was wrong. Linda didn't even glance at me. I tried to laugh at a story my cousin told. My voice sounded hollow to my own ears. That night, lying in bed beside Daniel, I told myself I was overreacting. It's just a family dinner. They're close. You're imagining things. But my mind refused to settle. In the days that followed, small things kept happening. A joke that felt too intimate. A message left open on his phone, with a conversation that made me pause. Linda calling him, and him smiling in a way he never smiled at me. I tried to ignore it, I really did. But the truth is, once you start noticing the cracks, you can't unsee them. Once the air feels heavier in the room, it never goes back to light. And so I waited and watched. Tried to convince myself it wasn't real. The thing about cracks, though, is they grow. Slowly and quietly. Until one day, the illusion shatters completely. The week after that dinner, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted. It was subtle at first. Just a glance here, a laugh there, a tiny hesitation in his voice when he answered my questions. I found myself watching Daniel in a way I hadn't before, not like a wife watching her husband, but like someone trying to read a secret he didn't want me to know. He came home one evening, brushing crumbs off his shirt. "Long day at work," he said, his voice calm, practiced. I nodded. "Same here." But I noticed something. A faint smell of perfume on his collar, not mine. And when he talked about his day, his stories had gaps. Small pauses where he avoided specifics. I told myself, maybe I'm imagining things again. But then came the text messages. I hadn't planned to look, but the glow from his phone on the kitchen counter caught my eye. He'd left it unlocked. A notification from Linda. I froze. My fingers ached to pick it up, but I couldn't.
Not yet.
I stepped back, heart racing. I couldn't read the full conversation, but just enough to make my stomach twist. She'd said something playful, something familiar. And Daniel had replied with a kind of laugh I had never heard aimed at me. I stepped away, trying to breathe normally. "This is nothing, you're overthinking it." But the next day, more hints appeared. A lipstick mark on a napkin he'd forgotten at the office. A voicemail he deleted too quickly when I walked by. Little comments he made almost jokingly that didn't make sense unless someone else was involved. I began to notice patterns. Subtle shifts in behavior. Longer phone calls and quick texts that he left open when I walked into the room. The worst part? Everyone else seemed oblivious. They laughed and joked with him. They trusted him. I trusted him, until I didn't. One evening, I tried to confront myself instead of him. I went back over the week in my mind, replaying every interaction, every glance between him and Linda, every joke too long, every touch too casual. It hit me then, the cracks weren't just small anymore. They were growing. And if I didn't pay attention, I would miss something crucial. Something that could ruin everything, and that's when I decided. I would watch. Quietly and patiently. Not yet confronting him, not yet confronting her. But watching, always watching. Because, once you notice the whispers, you can't unhear them. And once you notice the hints, you can't unsee them. Once the thought settled in my mind, it refused to leave. I wasn't paranoid, I wasn't emotional, I was observant. That's what I told myself. I stopped asking questions. Instead, I started paying attention. Daniel didn't notice the change at first. He still kissed my cheek in the mornings, still asked about my day, still played the role of the husband everyone admired. But I noticed everything else. The way he angled his phone away from me. How quickly he muted notifications. How his voice changed when Linda's name appeared on the screen. Not alarm, but anticipation. One evening, while he showered, his phone buzzed on the nightstand. Once, then again. I stared at it like it might explode. I had never gone through his phone before. Not once in 7 years. Trust had always felt easier than suspicion. But trust had brought me here. I picked it up. My hands were steady, but my heart wasn't. I didn't scroll wildly. I wasn't looking for drama. I was looking for confirmation. Their messages weren't explicit. That was the most terrifying part. Inside jokes, references I didn't understand, memories I wasn't part of. One message stood out. "Last night was a mistake, but I don't regret it." My chest tightened. There was no context.
No explanation.
Just enough to say everything. I put the phone back exactly where it had been. When Daniel came out of the bathroom, I was already lying in bed, pretending to scroll through my own phone. He kissed my temple. "You okay?" he asked. "Yeah," I said. "Just tired." It wasn't a lie. The next family gathering came too soon. Linda greeted us at the door, hugging me tightly, her perfume lingering on my skin. "Emily, you look exhausted," she said softly. Daniel avoided my eyes. I watched them from across the room. I noticed how he gravitated toward her without realizing it. How their conversations dipped into silence when I approached. At one point, I followed them quietly down the hallway. I stopped just short of the corner. They didn't see me. Linda was smiling. Daniel's voice was low. "This is getting complicated," he said. She laughed softly. "You're the one who said you could handle it." My breath caught. I stepped back before they could notice me, my heart pounding so loud I was sure someone would hear it. That night, I didn't cry. I opened my laptop instead, and I checked bank statements, phone records, calendar entries. Patterns began to emerge. Late nights that aligned too well. Work trips that matched Linda's weekends away. Charges that didn't belong to our life together. I took screenshots and I started a folder. I named it something neutral. Receipts. Because deep down I knew, if I was going to confront them, I couldn't rely on feelings. I needed proof, and I was going to find it. I thought I was prepared. I thought that once I had proof, I would feel stronger, more in control, but I was wrong. The proof didn't give me clarity. It gave me pain. It started with a photo. Not a dramatic one. Not something pulled from a movie scene, just a reflection. I was scrolling through Linda's social media late one night, my chest tight, my stomach in knots. She didn't post often, but when she did, it was always carefully curated. Smiling faces. Perfect lighting. Captions about gratitude and family. And then I saw it. I saw a picture of her at a cafe, a glass of wine on the table, and a caption about quiet moments. But behind her, in the reflection of the window,
Daniel.
it wasn't his face, and it was his watch. The one I bought him for our anniversary. My hands started shaking.
I zoomed in.
Then and again. There was no denying it. I dropped my phone onto the bed like it had burned me. For a long time, I just sat there, staring at the wall. 7 years of trust, of shared plans, of believing I was building a life with someone who chose me. And all this time, he had been choosing someone else. Someone who shared my blood. I felt stupid, not angry yet, just small. When Daniel came home that night, I almost confronted him. The words were right there, burning in my throat. I know, I saw you. How long has this been happening? Instead, I smiled. That was the worst part. I smiled while my chest ached, while my hands trembled, while everything inside me screamed to run or break something.
He talked about his day.
I nodded in the right places. I laughed when I was supposed to. Later, in the shower, I finally cried. I slid down the tile wall, hugging my knees, biting my lip to keep from making a sound. Because if I made a sound, I wouldn't be able to stop. And I couldn't afford that, not yet. When I looked at myself in the mirror afterward, my eyes were red, my face unfamiliar. I barely recognized the woman staring back. But one thing was clear, this wasn't just suspicion anymore. It was betrayal. And I was done pretending it wasn't real. And that's when I understood. The truth wasn't something I could ignore anymore. Don't miss part 2. Emily can't stay silent forever.